phobic for questioning, is my daughter really trans? We're just trying to get at the truth, really. We're trying to understand, why is it we can't talk about these things? Why is it we're in such a situation now that the response to any sort of unpopular idea is to be mobbed and to attack people and intimidate them and shut the conversation down? Like, how do we stop that from happening?
Explain rapid onset gender dysphoria, because I'm not really aware of that.
So it's this phenomenon that's been growing more recently.
How recently?
I'd probably say in the last 10 years, there's been a switch. So before, referrals to gender clinics of kids who are feeling that they are born the opposite sex was predominantly boys. And then suddenly there's been this explosion of girls. And so when you talk to the parents, and it's interesting, when you listen to the episode that we did, their stories are so similar. They're literally identical. Their daughters have always been gender typical, so they're always very girly girls. They've never been gender dysphoric. They go through puberty, they develop, there's no problem there. And then usually what happens is there's some sort of, educational session at school, or one of these girls, their friends, come out as trans, and then the daughter says, oh, I want to be a boy. And so if you take that child to a professional, like a therapist, the therapist has to affirm. The therapist can't question that. And so you have these girls, a lot of them have autism or they have other mental health issues. They're not getting treated for those issues. Instead, they're being told, okay, if you want to transition, we'll help you. And like I said, I'm not against adults transitioning. I don't think it's anyone's place to tell an adult what to do. And I think transitioning can be beneficial. But you want this, if someone transitions, you want it to actually help them feel better. And for these girls, if the issue is not even about gender, it doesn't make sense for them to transition.
Now, this rapid onset gender dysphoria, is this typically females?
Yeah, almost all females.
What is the cause of that?
I think it's social contagion. I think part of it is for some of these girls, they are a bit socially awkward. And so when they come out as transgender, suddenly everybody loves them and wants to support them. And I think as people should for trans people, because obviously it's a difficult thing to go through. But I think there's an aspect of it that people aren't talking about, that kids are coming out as transgender just because it gives them acceptance.
An extra reward.
Yeah.
There's a reward in terms of the attention they get.
Yeah. And
wow.
Also, I think for girls, puberty is not a fun time. Puberty is not a fun time for anybody. But for girls...
Well, I wouldn't know.
You didn't go through puberty? Okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did. But I love when people say, well, it's harder for guys. What the fuck would you know? You've never been a girl.
I think it's hard for everybody. Everyone is kind of awkward and lanky,
Life is hard. Life is weird. Being a person, being a finite organism, clinging to a ball that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, hurling through infinity. That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Life's weird.
Yeah.
And then the fact that your biology changes and you get inundated with hormones. And
mm-hmm.
It's just the life that we live, and then adapting to culture and trying to figure out how to be accepted.
Yeah.
And I think that certainly plays a part. This rapid onset gender dysphoria, how is this being treated? Like in terms of how is this being accepted in academia? How is it being discussed in the literature? And what are the recommendations for what to do about it, or the descriptions of what it is?
Well, there's only been one study so far that's been published, because it is such a new phenomenon and because it is so hard to do this work, because, people call it a myth. Pretty much anything that counters the transgender narrative is considered hate speech. So as a researcher, if you try to do any research on this issue that goes against what trans activists say is acceptable, you're going to get into trouble. So no one wants to touch it. So there's been one study that did show, with girls especially, it's very much about being influenced by friends within a peer group. I think there's some crazy high number in terms of the number of girls that will come out as transgender one after the other. So it's real. But I get why some people find it threatening, because it suggests that maybe trans people aren't really transgender. Maybe the way they feel isn't legitimate. But in terms of the way to treat it, these parents are at a loss. These girls are not getting treated for the underlying condition. There was one parent we spoke to, he saw 9 mental health professionals. Every single one said that your daughter's not transgender, but they couldn't go on the record as saying so. I think only one went on the record as saying so, because they're terrified.
They're terrified of losing their job. They're terrified of being attacked.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so interesting when you watch the similarities between any group that feels that they're being maligned, or that are being very defensive about their position and trying to hold strong and aggressively attacking people that are against it.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, this sort of behavior is mirrored in the Second Amendment people. Like the people that are pro-gun. Like if you tried any gun restrictions or any gun legislation or any changes in the laws of gun control, they aggressively go after it. They do whatever they can to keep things the way they are now and show how much positive benefits guns have and how many people are saved by guns. But it's this thing. Besides the gun, take the gun out of it, and it's the defense of the idea.
Yeah,
it's like they're committed. Yeah, they identify with being a person who's a gun nut.
Yeah.
Or a gun supporter, or Second Amendment, freedom loving. I got a fucking eagle on my back, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's the same thing with trans people. Like anything against anything, what you're saying, this is impossible.
Yeah.
This thing that you're talking about, this rapid onset gender dysphoria, being autistic people, that is transphobic. And they get super hyper aggressive about it. Instead of saying, oh, well, whoever this person is, well, if they're a trans person, instead of saying, well, I am legitimately trans, but it's entirely possible that there's a broad spectrum of human behavior and human thought, and that some of these people have a real issue. And I could see the reward, especially in today's climate. When you look at today's climate, that would be an interesting study, right? If you look at the climate of today and the support of trans people and the attacking of people that are transphobic and the overwhelming social benefit of supporting trans people, and then you look at the rapid onset gender dysphoria and see if they match up.
What you were saying, actually, I think the majority of trans people are not on board with this whole across the board, everyone should just transition. But I think it's another case of the vocal minority saying, shutting down anyone who dares to disagree.
Well, some trans people get very upset if non-trans people talk about trans people.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to do? Supposed to just shut our mouths and let you just run things? Like, what? I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, this Scarlett Johansson thing was fascinating.